David's billionaire life. The grand entrance of the mansion, with white marble columns and large glass windows reflecting bright sunlight, a lush green garden surrounds the entrance. David Carter sits on a plush velvet sofa, leaning forward slightly with his elbows resting on his knees. His gaze is distant, reflecting deep thought. Tundi sits in an armchair opposite at David Carter, leaning back casually. He looks at David Carter with a curious expression, one eyebrow slightly raised. David Carter looks directly at Tundi, his expression firm. He says, "I'm tired of women chasing me for my money. I want someone who loves me for me." Tunde leans forward slightly, his expression curious. He responds, "So, what's the plan?" David Carter sits upright, a determined look on his face. He says, "I'll disguise myself as a teacher and move to a small town. Let's see who loves the man, not the money." Tundi's face as he reacts to David Carter's plan with a slight smirk, his eyes reflecting amusement. The grand staircase in the mansion with polished hardwood steps and a golden railing adding to the luxurious atmosphere. David Carter disguises himself to meeting Amaka, a bright and lively food stall under the afternoon sun, with a simple wooden counter and a few customers seated at tables nearby. David Carter, dressed simply, walks towards the food stall, his gaze fixed on the counter, where Amaka Johnson is serving customers. At Amaka, Johnson stands behind the wooden counter, serving a plate of food to a smiling customer. Her long black hair is tied back in a bun. David Carter stops at the counter, standing upright and looking at Amaka Johnson with a polite smile. The bright sunlight highlights the simplicity of his attire. Amaka Johnson, behind the counter, turns towards David Carter with a warm expression, her hands resting on the edge of the counter. David Carter's face, showing a gentle smile as he speaks, his deep blue eyes reflecting sincerity. Amaka Johnson's face, warm and engaging as she listens to David Carter's request, a plate of steaming rice being prepared on a tray, surrounded by small bowls of colorful side dishes. David Carter smiles warmly at Amaka Johnson, his expression reflecting appreciation and admiration. Amaka Johnson chats with David Carter while leaning slightly on the counter, her posture relaxed and inviting. As David Carter glances around the food stall, observing the simple yet lively atmosphere, filled with soft classical music and distant laughter, the bright sunlight filtering through the open sides of the food stall, casting soft shadows on the wooden counter and tables. Getting close, David and Amaka sit outside her stall, laughing and talking. The food stall is nestled in a small town, surrounded by modest shops and a few pedestrians passing by. The stall is adorned with vibrant local fabrics and fresh produce. Amaka Johnson is seated behind the counter of her food stall, her hands resting on the wooden surface. She gazes at David Carter, a soft smile on her face. The morning sunlight highlights her features. David Carter sits across from Amaka Johnson, leaning slightly forward with a warm smile. His eyes are fixed on her, and his relaxed posture suggests comfort and admiration. Amaka Johnson's face as she speaks, her warm brown eyes reflecting sincerity. Her cheeks flush slightly as she smiles. David Carter's face as he listens attentively. His deep blue eyes show a mix of admiration and affection. A subtle smile plays on his lips. The proposal, David and Amaka stand by a small riverbank, a quiet riverbank with calm, gently flowing water. The surrounding area is lush with green grass and a few tall trees providing shade. A wooden bench is placed nearby and the bright sunlight reflects off the water's surface. David Carter stands by the edge of the riverbank, dressed casually, looking at the calm water with a thoughtful expression. His hands are in his pockets, and he stands tall, facing the river. Amaka Johnson walks toward David Carter from behind, her long black hair tied back in a bun. She is wearing a light, flowing dress, and her posture is relaxed as she approaches him. David Carter turns to face Amaka Johnson as she stands a few feet away from him. His expression softens, and he smiles warmly at her. David Carter kneels on one knee on the soft grass at the riverbank, holding a small, elegant ring box in his hand, looking up at Amaka Johnson with a hopeful expression. Amaka Johnson looks down at David Carter, her face lighting up with a joyful smile. Her eyes shine with emotion as she places her hand over her heart. The open ring box at David Carter's hand reveals a simple but elegant engagement ring with a single sparkling diamond. The grass is visible beneath his hand. Amaka Johnson crouches slightly to meet David Carter's gaze, reaching out her hand to touch his cheek gently. Her smile widens as she nods in response to his proposal. David Carter slides the ring onto Amaka Johnson's finger as she holds out her hand. The sunlight catches the diamond, making it sparkle. David Carter stands up, and Amaka Johnson embraces him tightly. They are framed by the serene riverbank and the lush greenery around them. Amaka Johnson rests her head at David Carter's shoulder as they share a moment of quiet happiness. The riverbank and blue sky are visible in the background. David Carter and Amaka Johnson walk away from the riverbank hand in hand, their figures framed by the tall trees and the distant horizon. The truth. A month after the wedding, David sits Amaka down in their small apartment. A wide view of the small apartment, warmly lit by the soft sunset light filtering through the window. The cozy living room is modestly furnished with a small couch, a coffee table, and personal touches like framed photos and books. David Carter sits on the small couch, leaning slightly forward, both hands clasped together nervously. His deep blue eyes are fixed on Amaka Johnson, who sits on the other side of the couch, looking at him attentively. David Carter's face, his deep blue eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and determination. His jaw tightens slightly as he prepares to speak. From David Carter's first-person point of view, Amaka Johnson sits on the couch, her warm brown eyes focused on him with curiosity. The soft sunset glow highlights her features. David Carter gestures slightly with his hands as he speaks, leaning forward. His posture exudes sincerity and vulnerability. Amaka Johnson's reaction as David Carter finishes speaking. Her warm brown eyes widen in shock, and her lips part slightly in surprise. Amaka Johnson's face as her expression softens. A gentle smile forms, her eyes filled with warmth and reassurance. David Carter's face lights up with relief and gratitude as he sees Amaka Johnson's reassuring smile. His deep blue eyes glimmer in the warm light. A shot of the framed photo of David Carter and Amaka Johnson on the coffee table, capturing a memory of their wedding day. David takes Amaka to his mansion. A wide view of David Carter's mansion illuminated by warm lights, showcasing its grand architecture and surrounding lush gardens. The soft ambient light of the June evening sets a romantic tone. David Carter stands near the grand double doors of the mansion, holding them open, looking at Amaka Johnson as she steps inside. He is dressed smartly with a composed posture. From the perspective of Amaka Johnson, the grand interior of the mansion is visible. A spacious hall with marble floors, a crystal chandelier hanging above, and luxurious furniture arranged elegantly. Amaka Johnson stands just inside the entrance, looking around the grand hall with a composed expression. Her hands are gently clasped in front of her. Amaka Johnson's face as she looks around the mansion, her warm brown eyes filled with quiet admiration, but remaining composed. Amaka Johnson turns towards David Carter, her gaze steady on him, her expression soft and attentive. David Carter's lips as he says the words, "This is our home now, but you're my greatest treasure." Amaka Johnson's face as she listens to David Carter, her lips curving into a soft smile, her expression filled with warmth. David Carter and Amaka Johnson stand together in the center of the hall, holding hands, their figures framed against the backdrop of the grand interior. Amaka starts a charity to help women in her hometown. a wide view of Adamaka Johnson's Charity Center, surrounded by women and children, with a bright and warm atmosphere. David Carter and Amaka Johnson stand side by side near the entrance of the Charity Center. David Carter holds at Amaka Johnson's hand as they smile warmly at each other.